So after months of talks and deliberation, Ireland finally has a new government. But it's a government of gangsters, crooks, Thatcherites and hypocritical Greens. So many people voted for change in the election, for an end to the decades-long domination of Irish politics by the right-wing parties. But then the Green Party, who benefited from the vote for change and benefited from transfers for parties that represented change, go and prop up the two landlord parties. But let's look at our new government and who these people really are. Our new Taoiseach, Micheál Martin, is a gangster. The guy was a member of Fianna Fáil back in the days of Bertie Ahern and even before that under Charlie High. And whenever he was asked, did he see anything dodgy going on, he says, no, I can't remember. He can't remember. He was sitting there right beside them when they were doing their dodgy deals. He started his career as a Fianna Fáil politician on Cork Corporation in 1985 and then got a place on the Fianna Fáil National Executive in 1988. So he's been helping to run the show in Fianna Fáil since 1988 and he never saw it. He was a right-wing Minister for Trade, a right-wing Minister for Foreign Affairs and a right-wing Minister for Health. In fact, as Minister for Health, it was him that abolished the old health boards and brought in the quango of the HSE, a huge step towards privatisation and outsourcing of our health service, which created the trolley crisis, the consequences of which we're still dealing with to this day. And how many people have died because of those decisions? His holiday home in Courtmacsherry was built by Fianna Fáil donor John Fleming. And it's no wonder that Fianna Fáil bailed out the bankers and developers. Sure, Micheál Martin is taking cash from developers himself. Developer Owen O'Callaghan says he gave a 5-figure sum to Micheál Martin. Micheál Martin says he has no memory of a meeting with fixer Frank Dunlop in November 1991, even though it's clearly written in Dunlop's diary. He even stole money from old people. The HSE took over $2 billion from old people in public nursing homes. Micheál Martin was notified when he was Minister for Health, but then 3 years later said he never read the memo. Either he's lying and he stole that money from those old people, or he's not lying and he's completely incompetent. Sure, when he was Minister for Health, he clocked up a 30,000 bill flying from Dublin to Cork, even though he had a government car. I mean, it was Fianna Fáil with Micheál Martin in the party, voting alongside them, that bailed out the banks, brought in the universal social charge. They were even for water charges. It was only when the mass movement came along that they started to mount a half-hearted opposition to water charges. But the tarnish to Leo Varadkar is hardly any better. Varadkar says socialists want to divide society. There's those who pay for everything and there's those who want something for nothing. Well, actually, demanding public housing and a public health service isn't demanding something for nothing. We're demanding something in return for all the taxes we pay. And the cheek of Leo Varadkar, who hands out corporate welfare to the likes of Apple, lets them get off without paying tax. Or people like Dennis O'Brien can be a tax exile and get away with it. So the rich contribute nothing to our public services. And then Leo Varadkar points at those of us who want public housing, who want a decent society for working class people who pay most of the tax in this country. And he says we're scroungers. And it's no surprise that Leo Varadkar is now the Minister for Jobs and Enterprise, because his dog whistle politics, where he points the finger at the unemployed, where he pushes down unemployment payments, where he pushes down the COVID-19 payment to force people into low-paid, precarious work. That's exactly what Leo Varadkar is suited for, and the new government knows this. As a young man, Leo went over to the US to serve with a Republican congressman, and he made his name within Fine Gael for attacking any kind of progressive inclinations any of them had. You see, Fianna Fáil were in power for so long that Fine Gael had to pretend they were for a just society. But Thatcherite Leo decided to make his name in Fine Gael by attacking any move towards a just society. This is a man who in a hot press interview said if he was involved in British politics he'd join the Tory party. He appealed to a conservative Christian base in Fine Gael. And the only reason they supported marriage equality and repeal was because after 2008, after the banking crisis, the right-wing parties lost a lot of their votes. They may have put money into the banks, but they lost political support as a consequence. And so, needing votes, they decided to chase the progressive agenda in order to get people to vote for them. So Leo Varadkar is rabidly right-wing and rabidly anti-working class. But what about the final member of the three stooges that makes up this new government, Eamon Ryan? Well, he's one of the biggest hypocrites in the Dáil. He goes on about change and goes on about saving the environment. And then when he was in government last time, screwed over the Shell to Sea campaign, where villagers in Mayo were trying to stop Shell, disregarding local democracy and building a pipeline. Eamon Ryan stabbed those people in the back. And the last time he was in government with Fianna Fáil, he cut the Dublin bus fleet. Surely it would be better for the environment if we had well-funded public transport. And in the programme for government, the measures they come up with to save the environment are to tax working class people with more carbon taxes. That's like being on a runaway train that's heading for a cliff and saying we'll charge the passengers in the third class carriage more for the privilege of going off the cliff, but it doesn't stop you going off the cliff. So instead of tackling the big fossil fuel companies and the corporations who actually cause the pollution, Eamon Ryan will go after working class people. And the programme for government, agreed by these three stooges, goes on about public sector pay cuts, balanced budgets, labour activation, all code words for a tax on the working class and a tax on the poor. So it's a government of gangsters, Thatcherites like Varadkar, and hypocrites like Eamon Ryan. And the only way to stop the attacks that are coming is to get out on the streets like we did during the Right to Water campaign.